right, Gauthmi. These are super fun. I really like a lot of these poses, and I really like that you have character interactions between the ox and this guy. Those are super awesome and really great for showing the story in your portfolio, especially, and yeah, just really great, really great. I noticed you had some questions. I'll get to those after I do the drawovers, and we can talk about those. So first things first, kind of like off the bat, you have on both of your sheets, you have these kind of cut off poses right here. And I think, you can definitely have kind of these, like here, let me show you. Have these kind of not full body things, but I don't know if I would put them at the bottom of the page. Okay, so like if you're gonna have these where they're more chest up, I guess, or something like that, maybe just put them like this, and have them be, finishing here. Having them at the bottom of the page almost feels like they're getting cut off, I guess, and it's just not quite as appealing. And sometimes it can work. Like this one's not bad, having this kind of poke out from the side. I'd say that this one is actually working all right. But this one where he's kind of stuck at the bottom right here, this just, I don't think is working as well as a portfolio page showing this work. I would kind of stay away from this kind of cut off down there. Nothing wrong with having half body poses. I would love to see this in a full pose. I think it'd be a lot stronger if both of these were shown as a full body. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that, on kind of your formatting. So keep that in mind. And after that, let's kind of just talk about some drawing things. So looking at your this animal right here, I don't know if I'm loving these legs. I can't remember exactly how you had them drawn on some of your exploration sketches in the lineup. But I think that there's some, this just isn't feeling quite appealing to me. This kind of feels broken. If you look at an actual, let's just cow leg, kind of even though you're going for a simplified style, we can still make sure we have some believable anatomy. If you were to imagine that these guys were going to be animated, right, and they had to build a 3D model of this shape for this leg right here, it's not going to work, and it wouldn't work from other angles. So we need to simplify it down, think about some joints, and see if we can fix it. So I like, thinking of straights and curves, right? I would then maybe think, okay, maybe there's a joint right here. Okay, and then you come in here, and let's see. I like that you're kind of having them thick, kind of, that's fun. But we want to make sure that it's believable. All right, so maybe it's something more like that. Okay, and then, you got the hoof. Okay. Even something like that feels better. Now you can push this a little bit more. You can, make this a little bit skinnier maybe. But this already, to me, feels like it's working just a little bit better. Design-wise. And I can look at this and kind of believe that it's actually bending like this. Okay, so I would maybe think of that when you're reworking these. Okay. This one too. I mean, I'm wondering. I don't love this double like this. I'm wondering if we can change that just a bit. Maybe it's, we have some kind of straight and curve, and thinking about maybe some kind of joint right here. You don't need to draw it out, but just kind of thinking about, okay, there's going to be a knee joint. See, maybe that works better. I mean, you could also kind of go with more of a, looking at some reference, and you can see kind of how a cow's leg does a little bit more, feels a little bit more, I guess, bony. Right? Something like that. That's kind of an option too. And figuring out how to simplify that down to kind of something that can work for yours. Maybe it's that. I don't know. But I think these legs need to just be reworked a little bit on him. I think we can find something a little bit more appealing, something that maybe works a little bit more anatomically correct wise. And yeah, I'd study reference and then just try and sketch and figure out how you can simplify the reference and still make it work physically. Okay. Let's take a look at him. I don't know if I love where the way this arm is positioned. I think it's getting a little bit. Let's just see. Let me see if I can. I think I want to see more of the something like that. Hold on. Let's see. It just feels like it's getting a little pinched right here. Like there should be more. So maybe it's something like this. That's still broken. Let's see. Sometimes it just takes thinking about it. And the problem too is now this feels skinny, and over here you have kind of the sleeves a little bit bigger. So we probably need to push these sleeves a little bit. And then if we want, this cuff to be here, we can do something like that. I just think that we need a little bit more information on this side. And also, I think if we're going to have the rolled sleeve over there, probably want to have some kind of rolled sleeve over here. Something like that. I just think we need a little bit more information on this left side. It'll just make him feel a little bit more dimensional. But yeah, it's a fun pose. Him playing his thing. Might have to change, this position of the hands, and I've already made, this super long compared to the other side, so want to make sure those work right. You might have to do your own a little bit of your own adjusting here, but yeah. Okay, I think that's all for that. This head feels small compared to this head. So maybe it's just a matter of enlarging it. Let's see if I trace this real quick and just enlarge it a bit, if it'll feel better. It doesn't need to be a ton, but it just feels like it's a little bit too small. So maybe even just that much bigger. Maybe feels a little bit closer to what you have on model over here. Let's see. Looking at him over here, he feels pretty good. I wonder if we can push this a little bit. Just wondering, and maybe it's because I can't really, maybe the scarf is what's throwing me off a little bit on him. He's feeling like he's getting a little flattened out right here. I'm wondering if maybe you could even turn his body more. And that way, you could really feel that this arm is coming from, maybe more of a 3/4 body. Kind of feels like you have his body straight on. I think we need to maybe turn his body more 3/4. So you'd see, something like that. His body would be more turned. That way you could feel that this arm's coming from the back. You can get more of this arm coming on the front. And it just feel a little bit more three-dimensional. Plus, play with that. I'd also maybe mess with his expression. I guess looking at this interaction, I don't know exactly what's happening. I don't know if, is there food in here and he's looking for food and that's why he's looking there. What's he doing here? Could his expression be pushed a bit? Could he be talking to the animal? Telling him like, oh, over there, and maybe the animal's looking up here. I think having eye contact when having these kind of character interactions is super helpful. Now they're connected, right? Now we're having something where they're interacting. So maybe that's kind of the key, is that those interactions, those eye contact between them two. So maybe mess with that. Let's take a look real quick at these poses. Same thing with the head here. And maybe it's the body that's changing a little bit. Something feels a little bit off model again with this head. Just looking at it, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's just because I don't have the other one next to it. Maybe it's the neck. I don't know. Maybe it's working. Let me take a look at this real quick. Yeah, no, I think it's working. It feels like this head. This one's, I think, the only one that got too small. I think we could push his expression here if you're gonna, he's kind of got this, he's happy. He's got the squish down eyes, and maybe we push those eyebrows down too. Let's see if you can push that expression a little bit more. This one, I think I would definitely push more. I think I would go, I think I would maybe curve these eyebrows down a little bit, make him feel really intense, Maybe something like that. And maybe he's looking down more, at his fingers. Kind of just direct the eye a little bit more to something. Yeah, I think that would be my suggestion on that one. Let's take a look at these real quick. So for these, there's a lot that's working here that's fun. It feels like you're staying on model for the most part. His head here gets a little bit off model, it looks like. And I think the part that's off model is looking at, and it's the only one that's kind of in 3/4, and so maybe that's the hard part. But these feel like it's going to be a little bit skinnier. Of course, in 3/4, you're going to have a little bit thicker than that front on, but I think for the style you're going for, this shape of his head could almost just flip around completely, evenly. Like if this is almost like a squash, right? Or a pumpkin, like that's his head. And so no matter what angle you're looking at it, it's not changing the shape. When you look at this shape for your 3/4, it gets really wide compared to what you have on some of these other ones. Even this one feels like it's almost in 3/4, and you're keeping that width a little bit better. So maybe you just need to squish it in a little bit to try and keep it on model. There's some expressions I'd maybe push here. I think this one, those eyebrows are breaking a little bit. So if we connect them off the bat here, let's see. If we push that up a little bit. And maybe his eyes are going more that way. Like that. That feels a little bit better. And I might have made these eyebrows too big, but that kind of gets the point across that I'm saying. Let's squish this down a little bit more. Make it feel, really squished. Maybe there's getting some squished in there. Yeah. See if we can't really squish that down. I want it to feel really squished. You want to almost feel, what his face feels like there. This one, I think, we can maybe his eyebrows could be surprised more. Or maybe something else with his eyebrows. This one just isn't feeling like he's expressing much. He's just looking. So maybe this one we could figure out something different with his eyebrows. Like maybe he's mad in this one. All right, maybe that one he's angry. Or maybe you take this one out altogether, and just push this one down over here, and then you kind of would get a flow like this. This one's fun, how it's kind of looking up. I think it's working for the most part. This one, maybe we can push a little bit more, make him feel a little bit more sad. Push those eyebrows. Yeah, I think just pushing just a little bit more. This one. It's a little bit similar to this one over here, so maybe I would go with something different. But I think it's still working, and I like how you've squished this eye over here a little bit. That's kind of fun. Maybe we squish the eyebrow down even more since we're squishing that. And then maybe his mustache comes up a little bit more this way. And a little bit more down this way. Just to really push that kind of, this thing that we got going. You can even lean his head a little bit. So like his head's leaned. That's gonna look weird, but maybe so his head's like leaning into it more. So like leaning this way. You could mess with that too. Maybe I'd mess with the shoulders on a few more of these. Maybe this squished one. Maybe his shoulders are squished up too. Make him feel, a little bit more squished. It might be fun. But yeah, okay. So I think that's all for those. Let's take a look at those questions that you had. The first one was, is it good to have raw exploration sketches that we initially create for any project in the portfolio? Portfolio pieces I've come across so far do not include them, but does putting them in show our process of beginning and making any difference impression-wise? So I guess it depends on what you mean by raw exploration sketches. If you're talking about like your exploration sketches when you're trying to figure out what a final character is going to look like, so like the page that you did for week 1, then yeah, those are great. Include those. Include how you're thinking of how you came up with what this final character for your story is going to look like. That's going to be good. Include sketches, rough sketches. Other exploration sketches of getting to some of your characters. If you mean like rough as in, rough expressions like this, or like your rough ones and then you're going to have cleaned up versions of these, I would leave those out. If you're going to do expressions, either, clean these up just a little bit, or leave them like this and put them in after you make some adjustments. But you don't need to show like your rough expressions and then your clean expressions, or your rough poses and then your clean poses. If some of these rough poses were a part of your exploration sketches for the character, that could work. But I'd say when it comes to adding, raw exploration sketches, the best place for that is for showing when you are exploring what that character is going to look like. And you can have some rough story moment sketches and some rough character interaction sketches too. Like I'd say these are to a point that they don't need to be cleaned up much more if you didn't want to. I would do some cleaned up ones as well in your portfolio, but you could include, these roughs. But I would maybe clean up your expressions a bit rather than keeping them rough. Hopefully that answers your question. I would say looking at portfolios is super helpful. So if you look at like, Brooklyn Walker's portfolio, she does a really good job of kind of showing each phase. She has some exploration of her characters, some poses, turnaround, some story moments, and you can kind of look at that stuff. If you look at, who's somebody else that'd be good portfolio to look at? Just kind of like any artists that are working at the studios you want to be in, like that's going to be a good way to tell what they're looking for, right? Exploration is super important. Showing you how you think is super important. But I do think you don't want a portfolio of just all rough stuff, right? And you don't want anything that feels like it's duplicating. So if you have like your rough expressions and your cleaned up expressions, that's just going to feel like the same piece, right? It's not going to be really necessary. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's move on to the second question. What are some elements that make our portfolio stand out? What are some things that would amaze you if you're at the hiring end? The skill and individuality are, of course, some of them, but any suggestions in terms of appealing presentation? Yeah, so of course, like you said, skill level, like making sure that your pieces in your portfolio are your very best pieces, right? Go for quality over quantity. Having 12 really good pieces is going to be better than showing 20 pieces and maybe there's some bad ones in there, because the bad ones are going to stand out for sure. Including, a little bit of everything, I think, meaning you have some exploration, a turnaround, some story moments, poses, expressions. That's going to be super important to kind of hit all the marks a little bit so you can show that you can take a character all the way through the pipeline, right? When it comes to presentation wise, I would look at art of books, because those are, beautifully designed, right? And if you can kind of model how you design after those, then your portfolio is going to look great, right? So, a lot of times you'll see that they're going to have nicely kind of designed, some exploration sketches, and then maybe they have their final character over here, right? And there's always words in the books, and you don't need to include words. I think words can sometimes be distracting in a portfolio, but sometimes a few words can be helpful, right? Especially if it's a personal project and you want to, kind of give a little bit of a description. But looking at how art of books are designed, each page, and kind of mimicking that, I think is a great way to build a portfolio that's presented nicely, right? Because those graphic design skills are also going to play a part in aiding your actual pieces, right? If you have a page and it's just a million different designs on it like this, and it's not gonna be as appealing. It's gonna be hard to look at. They're gonna probably skip right through it. So having beautifully designed pages are really important as well. I think another good thing is sometimes there's a few artists on Instagram that they create really beautiful Instagram posts, like when showing work that they've done for either a personal project or something, where they've laid it out on that Instagram square. And you could look at that as well. How are they laying it out on Instagram to make it appealing? What posts are making you stop and look at more? So be thinking of that. And then lastly, your last question. Yeah, you can absolutely, after you get everything, you can reach out to me and I can give you a little advice at how it looks when you put it all together. Even at the end of this last week, you could put it all together and include it in our week 5 assignment, and I can flip through it and let you know how presentation wise it looks. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll for sure let you know what I think of it. So hopefully that answers all your questions. Super great work, and I'll see you at the lecture.